Tere, tere, tere.
Tere, tere. Good evening. We're on. So welcome to the second Pipedrive product meetup online. My name's Maria, and I'm going to be hosting you this evening. And these wonderful professionals will be sharing with you their experiences. We're going to be talking about how at Pipedrive we've launched a product from zero to the hands of real customers. And hopefully you'll take some lessons with you. But before we go into the topic, there are a few things that I want to bring to your attention. You'll get to hear from these three people soon, don't worry. First is, this is our second event. We want to keep on doing more of those, but we want to hear from you what works and what doesn't. So you'll find that link there. Go to that link from your laptop or scan the QR code from your mobile phone, from wherever you're watching. By filling in the survey, you'll let us know what we can improve, but you'll also be automatically participating to win one of two prizes. Some of our legendary Pipedrive merchandise, of which I'm wearing some, as you can see, or one of 3 hours of product consulting with 3 of our top product leaders. So fill in the survey, and next week, one of our recruiters will reach out if you're among the winners of some of these swag, or if you'll be able to spend 1 hour talking product stuff with real experienced people. So that's one thing. Second thing, I'd like you to join us in this conversation. So definitely you'll be hearing a lot from them, but you'll probably want to learn some specifics. And for that, you're going to have the opportunity to ask your own questions. We're going to have 3 slots during this 2-hour session for you to ask about the topics we're discussing. Drop your questions in slido.com. You can scan the QR code from your mobile phone as well, or go straight to slido.com and enter the code that is followed by the hash there in the screen. We'll show it later again, make sure in case you miss it. And I think with that, we got it. It's time to start the show. So we're going to be talking about how some of the product people in the team work together within their specific areas of expertise to bring a new product to the market. And I'd like to start, obviously, from the biggest of all the elements, right? How do you create something from zero? We are an established company. We've been out there for 10 years, and we have a product. We have a customer segment. So there are a few things to define before that happens, right? So let's give the word to Krish. Krish, if you can share with the audience a little bit of who you are, what you do here at Pipedrive, and we'll start then digging into those details of how we started this.
Great, thank you, Maria. Yeah, so I'm the Chief Product Officer at Pipedrive. I've been here about 2.5 years, and primarily, I got to make sure we hire a great team. Kind of lucky there. I came in and it was a pretty awesome team. We now have a bigger and more awesome team, and also to own the vision and strategy for organization. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Yeah, this is, for me, little fun facts. This is the second Estonian company I've worked for. So I was previously here about 10 years ago in a small little company called Skype.
Just a tiny one.
Yeah, and no one had heard of Estonia back then. That's kind of changed. So it's awesome to work for Estonia's latest unicorn.
Thank you. Tell us one more thing, Krish. Is there something you're looking forward to learn in the upcoming months or years? Yeah,
so I would say that, after being 18 months locked in my study, this is the first time I've traveled. And one of the things I have to say is, as much as it's great to get work done when you're by yourself, this opportunity to collaborate with the team Just even being here for the last couple of days, the amount we've got done, the amount of the buzz that we feel from the collaboration, I'm really excited about that. So I'm looking for many more opportunities to catch up with the team in person. So in any other time, that might sound bizarre, but after 18 months of lockdown, very excited by that.
I think we feel, yeah, I'm very excited to actually be sharing the room with these people that I tend to see behind a screen lately. But let's give the microphone to Jana. Jana, share with everyone what you do here at Pipedrive.
For sure. So Jana, and I'm a group product manager here at Pipedrive. I've been with the company for just over 4 years, covering various roles from junior product manager, looking after more, let's say, older parts of Pipedrive. And the recent challenge is actually working on the new product that we're going to be talking about today. So stay tuned. And maybe if I was to throw some random facts, right? So before actually joining Pipedrive, I've covered various roles from customer support to marketing and eventually product management. And maybe one more random, very random, is I participated in a bodybuilding competition. Have to mention that. Sorry.
Ooh, watch out. That
So
tells you
don't mess with her. Seriously.
Yeah, that
It's
tells you how
long one.
disciplined this woman can be, right? And last but not least, Agne, please tell us, what do you do here at Pipedrive?
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. So I'm Agne, and I'm currently the head of customer and market research team here in Pipedrive. I joined Pipedrive 4 years ago, a bit more. And currently the team we have is 10 amazing researchers. I guess we are the top class research team, I would say, in the world. Like, I'm not modest. Doing a lot of exciting stuff. And then as in product, like research always has to be a step ahead. So it's like we got to see the exciting moments, like when we discover new things and then the other product conversation follows afterwards. So background is I'm fully research. So it's like I've been in research the whole my life. So currently in Pipedrive, got to do more UX side of it. But the market research has always been my precious thing also. So yeah, and for looking forward, then I would say, as I said, like we are a bit ahead of the others in the company. So yeah, we're becoming multi-product. We'll come to that soon. That means like we're discovering new areas, and that's exciting. So what we'll find. So that would be interesting.
Cool.
And when Agne says that they are a world-class research team, they are. I mean, I work with these people and they are really experts at what they do.
Yeah, one fun fact, like Maria has been like my boss, so it's like, yeah.
Maria's been my boss as well, by the way.
Okay, this is changing directions. Let's go back and put their attention on them.
And
they are the ones that are going to be sharing.
I
the
want to
lessons
add,
here.
actually, in terms of the research team, one thing that really changed the level of insights we got is when we brought our customer research team inside and working alongside the market research team. Suddenly, the depth of insights we got really multiplied. And so Agne's been leading the charge on that, and that has been incredibly useful, working with the exec team as a wise counsel to us, actually, to understand what are the biggest pain points for our customers and what are the opportunities in our market.
Yeah, you're going to be learning exactly how they actually help with this product in particular. But now it is time to get to the real questions. The first section of this discussion is going to be focused on strategy and execution. So keep your questions ready because I'll start them, but I'll give you a chance to ask your own questions. And yeah, as I was drawing earlier into this conversation from the strategy, my first question is to you, Krish. So yeah, we're an established company. We have a product out there, customers, people know us. How does it happen that we say, hey, let's build a new product and put it out there in the market?
Good question. So I remember when I joined Pipedrive, and we had spent, near on 9-10 years working on the one product, right? And we're really working on even one persona, which is the salesperson. And Pipedrive did a great job there, right? So we really focused niche down and understanding how can we help the salesperson visualize the process and understand where they need to focus attention. kind of nailed that. And what we really, the opportunity for us is what next? What are the next biggest problems we need to solve for? And what we found was that actually there are these adjacent problems people have, right? It's not like they just suddenly get leads out of nowhere. It's not like that our customers tell us, like, actually, when we get a customer, we really struggle to understand what to do next with the customer. And so we started mapping out the whole cycle. And actually, I think we've got a slide on this. So Maria, if you could go to that slide. Yeah, great. So just here, you know, we try to represent, and I haven't shown it all here, kind of left a few gaps. Maybe we could look at that more.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, you have beautiful blue boxes there. Is that on
Yeah,
them as
so
well?
I've maybe a little bit of surprise, maybe for a future edition of our meetups. But I can just show you. So we really focus on deal management, right? And also lead management, exactly. So we got those two stages. So we launched Lead Booster a couple of years ago. We had a relaunch last year, which saw terrific growth on that. And so we asked ourselves, what's the problem we're solving for? Right. And with deal management, it was very much the value prop for us was, how can we close deals faster? Right. How can we convert more deals? But the other pain point that or customers would tell us is, you know, what we really struggle is getting leads. So we spun up a whole team in Prague. In fact, our first meetup was just about this. And the value prop there was, how do we get more leads? And they started with the problem first and worked backwards to how best to solve that. And so there, you know, we have a solution now that helps, you know, we imagined, what if we could just get leads on tap, right? What if we could automate as much as that? And so we've got some great inbound tools there, and even outbound. So we have like a database of 400 million leads. So that was great. And we then started asking ourselves, okay, are there more challenges left of pipeline? And so then if you jump to the next part, you can see that our attention is now focusing on the value prop that I call, how do we nurture your relationships, right, throughout the whole cycle? And so that's where, and Jana will talk more, and Jana and Agne will talk more about that. But that was a really interesting space. We kind of said, you know, I said, hey guys, can we look at this space? What are the key pain points?
Yeah, that actually was going to be my next question, because, you know, you're talking like we started observing and we started mapping, and I'm trying to imagine you looking at a crystal ball and trying to make sense. But I'm sure there's something else happening there, right? And I'm guessing here is Agne the one to sort of blame or thank for making sense or mapping things. So Agne, can you tell us, how did research started contributing to this? You know, how was it that Krish approached? Did someone ask you questions? Did you have answers before someone asked you questions? How did research get involved in this?
Yeah, good question. Well, it didn't happen so that Chris just turned to us and we just, kicked off the first research in Pipedrive at that moment. We had done research heavily before. Of course, the focus has been always on sales. But when you talk to different customers or non-customers, basically you can see that the different, like, it's the stories they tell, you know, they always in collaboration with some other personas. So like they kept us telling about some marketeers being there, some people or salespeople dedicating the time to lead finding. So these were like picking up, they were coming up like mushrooms, and then like we learned more and more about them. And then we said, okay, by the way, like there are some people or personas that we should go and help out. So and that's mainly through interviews. Of course, we use different techniques. We'll come to that later, but the knowledge was coming up and it was like becoming bigger and bigger, and we were like really feeling, okay, we should do something about it. So,
okay, so you're observing that data that the research team is presenting you, and we feel strong about this being the next move. How do you put a team together? How do you say, okay, we need someone leading this? Because you can't do that, right? You have a whole product organization to lead from a different perspective. So how do you put a team together for this?
Yeah, and that was a big decision, right? So we had to ask ourselves, you know, as Agne and team had presented the data, and we could see this is really such a great pain point for our customers and such a great opportunity for us. And honestly, one of my questions is, isn't this a really highly competitive space? I was actually challenging the team. like there are so many tools out there that kind of do this already. And so one part of the process is to be really super short. So, you know, I remember we had lots of discussions and we looked at the data and said, you know what? And we see that there's a lot of tools out there, but one of the biggest challenges our customers have is around this, the effort that they go through managing the data, right? Data syncing between different platforms. This data is siloed, and the real challenge is their time. We have customers telling us, I remember in our discussions, they're losing 2 to 4 to 6 hours a week just cleaning data, processing it, and syncing it. And so we really did the rounds to make sure that as an exec team and the wider leadership team, we really appreciated that one, not only is an opportunity, but two, we actually have something that we can add here. So once we had that confidence, we really asked, wait, is this just a project? Are we all in on this? How serious are we? And we felt this is such a big pain point and that we have a lot to offer here that we decided to spin up a whole new tribe. And so we have, and just to give you context, we did acquire MailyGen. So that was just before the pandemic hit. So they have this great technical expertise in terms of the infra that's required, the domain expertise. So we had that, right? So we'd already started prepping that. So we wanted to bring them in. But one area we felt as kind of Pipedrive is our experience. Our product and customer experience. And so we wanted to really bring in a long tenured PM, someone who knows the ropes, someone who can think about this marketing space. And Jana, you were the obvious choice, I think. You know, you had that extra experience, that background. You've seen what works, what doesn't work, and how to seamlessly integrate with our experience. So we kind of, we've kind of nudged and persuaded Jana. So a lot of it was around ensuring we had the right players, especially the leadership in terms of PM. Have we got the right PM? Have we got the right designer in place? And have we got the right engineer? And so that trio we had to get right. And it took us a while. It took us a while to get there. But once we had that in place, we then put a plan to really invest heavily and build out a tribe across a couple of locations to invest in that space.
So, Jana, it looked like you were the one that had that discipline, right? Not everyone can cover a bodybuilding process that requires a lot of discipline, and apparently you apply the same thing for products. So how was it from your perspective? How were you approached, and what were some of the first things that crossed your mind when you were presented with this challenge?
Right. So first of all, yes, that's exciting. Let's do it, right? I mean, some PMs probably not so much into it. I know you would argue about that, Krish, but not everyone wants to do.
Why would no one want to work in this space? Surely this is like a massive greenfield space.
No, but it was super exciting. I was like, okay, we haven't built anything new for a while, right? Let's go into it, and that's a great opportunity. So of course I said yes after a couple of conversations here and there. But I guess the most difficult, not difficult, but like the challenge was, okay, do I know enough about the area? How do I grasp that knowledge as fast as possible to be able to have an opinion on what should we do next, lead the team, present to execs, tell Krish, okay, I know exactly what we're doing, let's just follow my lead on this. So I guess that was the first shock of like, okay, how do we get onboarded as fast as possible?
All right. And how did you do that then? That was the first challenge. How do I learn about all of these new areas? You've mentioned that we've acquired a company. They brought some expertise. Agne, you've mentioned how much data we had been gathering, but how did you actually use this information to make sense of it and come up with a plan?
Well, thanks to Agne. Yeah, I think we'll be thanking her a lot along this conversation, but we had so much information available, right? So it was just a matter of like, okay, I go through it. The main point was to understand what are the pain points, why am I actually solving this, to check with Krish, am I hearing the right things, basically. And then, to be honest, just get enough depth of knowledge on different topics. So have conversations about infra, have conversations about, certain areas of expertise, domain knowledge. So just get enough of it. Basically, talk as much as possible at the beginning, to get onboarded and get it flowing.
Okay, so you mean talk as much as possible among yourselves, right?
Well, users also come into place, of course, but
Okay.
thankfully we have a lot of it covered by Agne. But of course, talking to users is like a must-have, right? To get an opinion and understanding of what's actually happening out there. That's default, that's a given.
So Agne, how do you actually then involve these other people in the process? Because there's a lot of data, not everybody can or has the skills to be interviewing, or I don't know, what are the things that are happening behind the scenes to generate all this data that helps them build the plan?
I think that was the most exciting part when we kicked it off, because we had a lot of data, but it was like still something we had learned through the sales perspective. We had never focused on like marketing the area as such. And I think I remember this research we did, that basically the whole team was involved. It means like we all did research. We all interviewed customers. It was not like research did and then we presented results. Everybody was involved. Like we had like the script, or like what we used as a template for that was the same. And we basically did like 40 interviews or more. I think I have a slide even about that somewhere. And I think we did it very quickly. I remember in 2 weeks, all was like done, like put in a bucket. And actually this exercise put us all on the same table. So basically we were like all aligned. We understood the pain points. So even like, I remember in some of the discussions, people are, I remember like this, like Miguel from there, like, he had the same thing, or like, this, like this Peter there, like mentioned similar stuff. So like, I was really happy that the team was, okay, let's tackle now. Like there are plenty of problems. Let's somehow like start from like, touching them and then going deeper and deeper. So
is this what you mean? Is
yes,
this
exactly. This is just an example from, I think Mira we used at that time. We'll come to the tools later, but the team from both Mailigand side and also the new people who joined, like the team, like everybody did it. So yeah, it was cool.
All right. And Jana, I'm guessing it's not like, Krish had some questions, Agne helped validate with the data, you were invited to come on board and you agreed, and then you put a plan and start executing. Does it work like that? Or do you need to work on a vision for the team to get on board?
Definitely vision has to be there, because it's a new team, it's a new area, right? It's a continuation of Pipedrive, but we have to get people aligned. We have to make sure that they believe in what we do. They know what's the plan like, right? Not just like, okay, these are the tickets, these are the projects, but where we're headed. And that was super important to have it done, like as the first thing when joining in my role, I would imagine.
So I'd like whoever feels like answering to this question is more of opinion, right? But when it comes to vision and strategy, it's very common to hear that this work requires some level of sophistication and artistry. And I was reading this book recently where an author said that actually strategy and vision work is pretty mundane, because it requires you to admit problems that relate to the people and the organization that you work with, and not everyone is ready to do that. So what's your position on that? Is the strategy work something that requires some level of artistry, or is it more like, just gotta have the discipline and commitment to admit those problems?
Yeah, so it's really nice to be able to say it's one or the other. I think for me, the vision and strategy really comes to life, and it's kind of in our DNA at Pipedrive. It's those customer conversations we have, right? When we really understand the pains that our customers have, everything revolves around that. And so that's why we're very lucky to have Agne and team. Because it's not just them. We have actually all the PMs, the designers, they're having regular conversations, but it's actually about aggregating that and really understand not just what our customers tell us, but what gets really interesting is when we really start understanding the problem behind the problem, right? Sometimes what people tell you and what they mean and what they do, they're three different things, right? And really getting the depth of, right, actually, as we see your process and see your flows, we really have a great depth of understanding to the point where we can even name these people, right? And the company they work for and the scenario and the use case they're in. And then honestly, the strategy and vision work becomes so much easier because once you understand the pains, then everything revolves around it. And it's really kind of then saying, okay, and what point of view does Pipedrive have on that? What is it that we're doing that is uniquely differentiated and adds a ton of value? And we are lucky. We have a great pool of talent in here. When we come together, luckily, one thing we're not short of is great ideas about how to solve those problems. And we think more broadly. We're not just thinking about what do we do in the next mission or what are we doing in the next quarter. We're really thinking about, no, wait, what does the world look like in 2025? And actually, how do we get to that world? How do we actually really solve for the bigger problem? And what are the steps? What are the key strategic milestones that we're going to take to get there? And we work backwards from that. And so then we have a very clear footing of what that first step is, because we're very confident that that takes us towards our vision. Every step takes us towards our vision.
So that sounds like you're making, an investment of time, of people that may lead to an answer that we're actually not doing this, which doesn't seem to be the case here. But I'm here, we've got Jana from product, we've got Agne. You talk about other product people, but at this early stage, when you're still discovering what's the actual problem we should be solving for, who else is involved in this process then? Is it only these disciplines, product management, research?
Yeah, so it's we really make sure we have good representation, because once you develop this, it can't be developed in isolation, right? It has to have input and feedback and buy-in for a number of areas, right? So, okay, what's the marketing perspective, the product marketing perspective? Actually, what is the sales support success perspective, the go-to-market teams? So that's very key. We have to have that cross discipline input and feedback. And actually, the customer or a subset of the customers become a key stakeholder there. We really try and sense check what we do with them the whole time.
Any other roles maybe that are involved at this stage of, defining the plan, the vision, nailing down you mentioned the product marketing, sales, success, but we're talking software. I'm surprised you guys haven't brought up a very important discipline.
Starts with E?
Maybe, and ends with an R.
Okay, is it engineering?
Yeah, wow.
All right, yes, those lovely people also get involved, of course, as soon as possible, because at the end of the day, they're the ones to actually build it. And if it's not possible, I better know it sooner than later, right? So they can do their research as well. It's not just the user perspective there, but actually, is it doable? Can we do that? And how long it might take? So however vague details are, I would strongly recommend, reaching out to people that you brought up.
And one thing I would add with engineering is they, of all the disciplines, they understand the art of the possible. So once they understand the problem we're solving for, they're a great partner to understand, actually, like, what could we do, right? They understand what's technically capable. And I find engineers, along with design, they can really help us think around great solutions.
And you brought up design. So what are some of the memories you have from these early stages and the work you were doing with design? What role was design playing in this stage of defining the plan?
Okay, I'll take this one to feel free to chime in. I think it was really important that they are present at exploratory stage, so they were there not just designing, but actually participating in those interviews. Involving them early on was very important, very crucial in this sense. Testing it together, mapping the flows together, going back to problems together. This was something we've done basically daily that has helped us to be on the same page. So when they were designing something, actually, eventually we were producing something. This wasn't a surprise of like, oh, I haven't heard of it, or where did you come take that from? So, yeah, that's my perspective on
Yeah,
this.
exactly. Like I think design was involved in research also from the very beginning. We have in Pipedrive like this thing, like everybody calls. It means basically like, everybody, talks to customers, like at least, with some frequency, and actually designers are really heavily involved. And that happens also with this product. So, and also like early on when you have the first mock-ups or like first prototypes, like go back to the customer, back and forth. So they were always in the calls, either taking notes or like revising. So it was a good collaboration from the start. So.
And there's a word that Jana used that some people may not be familiar with, that maybe Agne, you can explain us. So she talked about how important it was to have designers involved early in exploratory research. What is that, and what other kind of research is there out?
Well, I think like understanding the pains, or even like having this empathy, I think for the designer is like the crucial, like what is his pain like with this, like, how do they feel like when using the product, or like, and you can actually get the best feeling when you actually talk to someone who like shows or like tells the pain with his own words. So I think that was the main thing from those interviews, I guess. So, and I think I hope it helped them a lot.
If you're getting impatient about asking your own questions on strategy and execution, we're almost there. But I'd like to ask one more question from Krish, right? So you spent all this time figuring out whether this was the right move to make, synchronizing with other execs, placing a bet, invited other people in the company to take control of these and move forward. But how are you involved at this stage then? The team is rolling, they're starting to execute, they seem to understand what's the problem to solve, they've got the roles that are needed. So how do you stay involved at this stage?
So my job, I have discovered, is mostly to ask really stupid questions. I'm really good at that, actually. So no, I'm really there. So because it's so formative, I mean, honestly, we're looking at a product here that is pre-product market fit, right? So we really have to get this right. And so I ask myself questions like, hey, how are customers responding? Do people, are we really solving the right problem, right? And of course, we've done the research, and the innate answer is yes, but I want to see evidence of that. So I'm constantly looking for that. That user feedback is a great, that especially early on when we had the design prototypes, and we kept iterating constantly with customers and getting that constant feedback. And you see in their eyes, you can see when the pupils dilate, and it's like, we've just nailed something. We can see we've nailed something, right? And then I ask myself, hey, how are we different to whatever anyone else has got to offer? And honestly, I know some of my questions are not easy to answer, but I'm constantly looking for validation to these key fundamental questions. There are many others, but these are the key questions I keep coming back to.
Yeah, I can also comment on that. Like in research, also when you first time show something to the customer, you have already sort of solved the pain, and you have some mock-ups or protos. It's like there's so much anxiety also in there, like if they do it, like do they understand it? Do they get it? Or like and then the first interviews I remember was like you breathe in, and then you show like, okay, share the screen, please, and do this task, or like try this action. And then like we knew the pains and we knew how to solve it, but the first time you see it, like really customer, oh yeah, I take it from there, and then I go there, and oh, it's very good, like I choose the filters from here, and then I create the list, and it was like, woof, like it's like, okay, we have nailed it, or like at least part of it. So that's a really nice feeling. Yeah.
So what I get from all of this is that we need a little bit of trust, a lot of research, and a moment when we make decisions and synthesize everything. So we then place the bets and we let experts do it, but we need to have the right people in place to do it, right? But let's give the microphone, that is figuratively speaking, to the audience. I'm going to pick questions.
Have we got questions? Are we getting questions?
We are.
Actually, if we're doing that, it'll be good to see the QR code just for anyone who hasn't.
Yes, of course. If you missed it, you didn't, don't worry, we got you. we have here the QR code. Scan that. You will end up at that website, slido.com, or go straight to slido.com and enter the code that is followed by that hash, and then you can ask your questions there. But yes, I'm going to focus on the questions right now about the topic we've been discussing, strategy and execution when starting a new product. I see there's a popular question there. We'll cover that one later on. But let's start with Michael. Michael is asking us, what is the biggest challenge with different customer demands in different countries when developing a new product? Would like to take that one?
Who wants to take that? I take it. You want to take it? Yeah. So one thing is that actually it's important to even understand which countries we want to target, right? So it's thinking about the segmentation, thinking about which are the customers we want to cover. And we identified, and I think Agne will talk about it later, there's a particular persona we knew that has a struggle because they're actually wearing multiple hats. They're not just doing one job. So we knew that. That's great. But then also, what regions do we want to target? So we started to think about that. I can say, and Jana can talk about this in more detail, but one of the key areas that at least I've experienced in the past working multiple products is that whole the localization angle, especially when it's Germany. Like Germans, man, they have long words. Like the whole interface breaks. That's one. Two is one thing that gets really missed is actually the go-to-market side. We often have on the go-to-market side a very, let's say, English-speaking bias, and we think about the content for English, but really need to localize that, right? How do you localize the go-to-market that makes sense into those areas? And which customers? We're lucky. We have a great customer base. So we tap in to some of the customers from each of the regions, and we really test it with them and saying, hey, how does this work for you? How does this match your expectations? So I really think from an accessibility point of view, you need to think about these target customers and match, right? So, you want to test for visual impairment, you test it with someone who has a visual impairment, or if they're blind, you want to test something that's going to work with the German market, actually find a customer or a target customer from the region and you test it with them, because as much planning as you do, they always come up with something you didn't think of. So let's get ahead of that and actually start testing that with, let's say, early adopters and early testers. But I'm sure you guys might have something to add there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if we were to focus specifically on this product, on campaigns, right? The decision was to not localize it just yet, right? So if you're launching something completely new, then probably kind of selecting a language, a region would be a wiser thing to do, if that would be the question. But of course, Pipedrive has its specifics for each market, more or less, be it the billing flow, be it the language we use. But yeah, for sure. If it's the first product, I would actually not go all in right away.
I agree at that idea of staging the work. So let's get it right for one, let's say, market or language, and let's scale that out. And while we do that concurrently, let's be speaking to people in other regions. So we're lucky that we've had that opportunity.
All right. I hope that answered your question, Michael, and our popular question continues to become more popular. But we're going to take another question from Ravi on the topic of the first stages. So how do you define, says Ravi, how do you define the MVP for a new product? And I know MVP is something that we talk a lot about in the world of product, but just for the sake of not falling into different definitions, I'll also ask you when answering to this question, what do we mean by MVP? Because I know the definition can change from company to company. So yeah, how do we define the MVP of a new product?
Right, so I'll start. So minimum viable product, as people would refer to it, but I guess in our case was something that we can show that can be used immediately. This is not something we would go to users, show, hey, do you like it? Okay, you like it, great stuff. We would actually build something that we can put out there and already start charging as soon as possible, let's say. So that's what we took as a goal of, right, okay, let's put something that is usable right away. So that was a minimum, basically, in our case. And how to define it, I think looking at this problem space, at the pains we've identified, pick the most pressing ones for the target that we've selected, and kind of working from that and thinking of solutions and making sure, is that enough or is it too much? And you do that through iteration and conversations, basically.
Yeah, and I can comment on that. Like there is like also research heavily involved in that phase. Like exactly, you have the qualitative data, like you have a lot of pains, but you know, in which order you should start solving them, what are the most itching ones? So for that, like you can use like quantitative research on top of the qualitative, and there are different methods how to, you can prioritize the sort of pains, and then so that you actually tackle the first 3-4 ones with your MVP, and then you're ready to go. So yeah, I will talk maybe about the methods later, but in research we used MaxDiff for that, but there are other ways how to do it. So
yeah, I just want to add as well, just having that again, it's that balance of the qual, like the conversations we have customers, because you ask a customer, they're going to go, they want everything, let's face it, right? But when you start asking them to, okay, well, let's stack rank it, you start to see the 80-20. You start to see, okay, like this keeps coming up. But I really loved the work that Agne and team did around the MaxDiff, because it really made it hard data. It's like, I see if we just do these 3 things, there is a huge appetite and willingness to pay to solve this problem. It made it very crystal clear. And so having that composite of data between the customer research, right, in terms of the conversations we have, and the kind of quantitative survey data that came back, it really just became kind of maths at that point. Like we kind of knew exactly what the anxiety was and exactly what we need, what the solution, the problem solution need to solve.
Okay, Ravi, I think that was a very round response that included 3 different perspectives. How did we define an MVP? There's more questions that I'd love to cover on the topic, but I would like us to first move to the next section, which is focused on tools, techniques, and teams. And we'll get
I want to hear about the secret question that's like
I'm getting already
apparently
we'll
like
get
top
there
question.
as well. We'll get there as well. Stay tuned. So our second section is focused on tools, techniques, and teams. Because I think you're probably wondering how some of these things happen. You know, you probably want to visualize some of these professionals on their desks behind a board working together. What do they use? How do they do it? Because there's so many words and things that you all probably have a very different image of how these work. So what I'd like each one of you to think about is, what are some of the critical tools, applications, techniques that you use in the stages we've covered so far, right? From strategizing to putting together a vision to coming up with a plan that designers and engineers and other people will have to execute. And please, whoever would like to, what are some of the critical tools to help you out in this process?
I could maybe start with that one. So the tools used, so I many times mentioned interviews. Well, basically that is one-to-one interviews. That's the method, like in qualitative research. We also did persona research. That was really helpful. That aligned the team, like who is the target persona we actually building this tool for. So I think I have a slide even there somewhere. So that's just the one outcome of that. Maria will pull it up. So I think Krish already mentioned this kind of person wearing many hats. That's a person we are calling hands-on Harriet, actually, within the company. So she's the person exactly who would be the person using our like beta version and or the MVP version, and then we'll build on top of that, and we will at one point reach this marketing Mahish as a persona who is already a proper marketeer, needing more features, probably a more mature product at one point. But we already now know like what are their goals, what are their pains, what are their needs. So basically we have a path ahead, and we already know like what to tackle. Other tools, Meetup, I think it's coming up like in different, probably Jana will mention it also. So it's a good tool to also do research, to combine research, structure research. Surveys, as I mentioned, and in surveys you can have many different methods. For that, I think we used MaxDiff, as I mentioned. We used different pricing researches like One Western Rock. We use some readiness to pay, some methods in surveys also, like conjoint at the very end when we had packaged basically the feature set, like we tested it again and again. And is this actually the main features that people are ready to pay, and what is then going to be the price? So, so yeah, I covered main things, I guess.
I guess from my side, yeah, of course, +1 to Miro. In product management, we used it beyond just looking at the research. Basically, any brainstorm we had, prioritization, roadmap, we pretty much used it for everything. I think Miro exploded this year with their success with this pandemic because it became such a popular tool. Actually, maybe the other tool I'll bring that I personally use, I highly recommend if you have big windows, sticky notes, you know, that works as well, really well. But no, at the beginning, when you go through brainstorm kind of with yourself, that's very useful. But other than that, maybe the technique, if I was to throw that as well, we use a design sprint. So I think we have a slide on that as well to show like how it looked. But when you kick off something completely new, this is a basically great place to start, great technique to get going, where you can actually get everyone on board. You can also come up with a potential solution. So you can also see, okay, are we headed the same way? Do you understand this? How did we come up with this? So it's the event that we usually have when we kick something off. So I could recommend as well. That's something that pops in my mind of as a technique to use.
I know my role here is to ask questions, but I'm very tempted to add something here. So Jana mentioned that sticky notes, if you have a big window, I'm a big fan of paper material. I have my notes here, for example. And one of the reasons why I learned design sprints are so effective, actually, they say, is because we have a lot of special memory. And so when you're working on a design sprint, you are throughout several days building up on knowledge that you keep up on the walls, whether they're digital like in Miro or physical real walls of a room. You start building knowledge and connecting them, and it's so much more easy to make sense of such vast amounts of information and different perspectives, and it all kind of clicks in the end. At the beginning, you don't think you're going to reach somewhere. It's also abstract and chaotic. And at the end, you
Magic
land on
happens.
a plan.
Yeah, then it's
Yeah,
I
true.
mean, we had a call, right? Maria asked me, so what is it at the back? Because I have windows just behind my back, and it was covered in sticky notes. She was like, "What is it?" I was like, "I'm doing a new project, so I'm trying to get the grasp of it. This is what it is. I'm super stressed."
It looked like a Tetris wall, like a giant Tetris wall. But I'm pretty sure a lot of people are curious to understand what tools a CPO uses, right? Because Krish is not on the day-to-day design of things and running interviews and putting sticky notes. So what are some of the tools that you use on your day-to-day work to make sense of your thinking, Krish?
Yeah, I mean, these guys have great tools to, like, you know, make sure I'm not interfering too much. But one tool that I have found very useful is more of a framework, really, is around just having regular check-ins with the team, but actually having structure around it. So we call them product reviews, if you like. And so every 2 weeks we check in, but very specifically to review risks, which sounds dull, right? I think review risks. But our philosophy is so much that, listen, maybe you can't control success, but you know what we can control is actually where you might fail. And so we look at kind of generally 3-4 risks. So we look at feasibility risk, we look at desirability risk, right? Actually, is this something that the customer wants? Is this a problem that really looks to be solved? That's early on. We look at business viability risk, again, early on, right? How valuable it is. So we look at those risks, and we look at different types of risks during those stages. And I feel that's a very useful tool for the team, in the sense that the team is great, right? They have the knowledge, they have the domain expertise, but sometimes and often over a while, you become blind, right? Actually, there's a certain amount of assumed knowledge. And so, like I say, what I bring to table is ignorance, right? So I don't come in with these assumptions. So I'll ask, why are you doing that? Actually, isn't there a risk of X? Or let's get one of the maybe someone senior in engineering from a different team. Actually, that's the key thing, is get people from different teams, from different environments, look at this. And so it almost becomes like a brain trust. You have your peers look at this and really see things from a different perspective. And once you have those conversations early on, you've massively reduced risk. And it's a bit like I guess Michelangelo working on the sculpture, right? You're just chipping away. Okay, that risk is gone. That risk is gone. That's gone. And you're kind of left with something, all that's left is success.
You're
beautiful.
You're left with a unicorn.
Touch wood. And a unicorn. Yeah. But that's the hope, at least, right? Actually, how do we structure and support the team so that we actually have more eyes on this to bring them that added and extra support, so we can maybe course correct as and when it's appropriate.
Amazing. So one more thing that crosses my mind, right, is you've been describing a lot of the tools that you use to get your work done within the space that you're working with. But I'm guessing that, again, we have another set of teams that probably are not involved in the work, but they need to stay informed, right? Maybe other product teams, maybe other departments. So spending time having discussions with each one of them is probably not the right approach. That would be extremely time consuming, and you're probably delaying, lose track. So how do you keep other parties involved? What tools, what techniques, what approaches are there to keep people effectively engaged with what's happening in that new exciting team?
So I can make a comment here. So one thing is, I would say, is as our team has been scaling and we're growing and we're continuing to grow. So by the way, if you're interested in joining, let us know. Have a look at pipedrive.com/jobs. But as we're scaling, we're finding new challenges, and this communication and keeping sync is a big challenge for us. And so we've really tried. So we'll have some key points where we might have like a live call between people. We try and reduce that, right? As anyone knows who works in product, the amount of time suck meetings take is pretty significant. So we want to make sure if we have a meeting, it better have a purpose. Super valuable for the team. But also we try and encourage asynchronous communication. Because we're not all in one place, right? And sometimes maybe we're all from the same town, but we may not be in the same office at the same time. We're across multiple time zones. So that ability to capture and really capture our thinking, capture our status, capture what we're going to do, capture what we're going to plan in writing. And it's simple, right? Maybe it's Confluence, maybe it's a Google Doc, but we try and capture that and collaborate maybe. So rather than me having a meeting and sharing my thoughts, maybe I capture those thoughts and maybe use a Google Doc to brainstorm, right? And actually say, hey guys, this is my thinking. And I'll say to, sometimes share something with Agne or with yourself and say, hey, this is not like my 20% readiness thought, right? It's not fully formed. Love to get your feedback. And so that's been a great tool I have found to spar and bounce ideas, if you like, right, with other people.
Fun fact, I was around when we as a company decided to move from random Google Docs to a more systematic approach of documentation, because as we grew, it became harder to track it all in. That's when we ended up, like many companies, adopting Confluence. But I am with you that documentation, asynchronous, getting in the discipline of writing and reading, help being efficient. People think documentation is actually a waste of time, but on the contrary, you're respecting and saving a lot of people's time when you document things properly and share them in the right channels, right? Anything you'd like to that, Agne or
Just
Jana?
saying, like, especially research, coming back to that research, like every now and then. So documenting research, I think it's very crucial. So having research libraries and really structured, and that's really crucial. We're also struggling with that, but we're thinking of new ways, like how to make sure that all gets documented, people can find things, and we're sharing it among everybody. So
and it's been really good, especially as we have new people join, because rather than having to learn something from scratch, we just then have this wealth, this library of content, right, across the different disciplines that they can very quickly onboard and accelerate with, right? So that's actually almost like the added value we have is we have this organic knowledge that we can just keep tapping into and growing, right? I think that's a little bit of a powerhouse that we've been developing across research, I would say design and product.
Thank you. Jana, another question for you related to the synchronization between teams. I'm guessing because there were already things existing that were part of the previous product, you could potentially benefit from the work that other teams had done. So how did you identify, if in any way, any overlaps or any work that other teams had done that you could reuse within your new area?
Does it mean like Pipedrive teams, or how do we?
Yes, but if you want to take it beyond that as well.
All right. So if you were to repeat that question differently.
Yeah.
So I get the point.
So your team was new, the whole
Yeah.
area was new, but there were another bunch of teams that were working already with other products, right?
Yeah.
So was there any of their work useful to you, of input to you?
Okay. So I guess in this sense, probably looking at team and leads in Prague, so lead booster team, because they've launched something already, right? They've produced a new product. So that was an inspiration, I would say, to tap into this for sure. Also, we have platform teams that cover the entire experience of Pipedrive. So talking to them as well was also like a great source of inspiration, rather than me thinking, okay, how do we cover this flows or introduce something new? It might already exist, and we might have a library of solutions available for that. So tapping into our internal kind of platform availability was also key to make it work. Yeah, that was definitely a place to go to for me.
All right. Sounds like we got it covered. So that's on tools and techniques. I'd also like to talk about the team. How many people are there in this team right now? Approximately, I mean, ballpark.
So I think we're looking at about 25 altogether with engineering, plus minus.
Okay, and everything we've covered so far, from the moment that we saw this gap in the market research and started off the team, how much time has passed since all of that started?
Yeah, so there were a couple of stages actually. So we had the Mailigen acquisition back in around March, just before lockdown, and then we really had the research coming in that this is, we really started to identify areas of opportunities and customer problems, and then it was around summer last year, right? I would say that Jana really came on board. And ran with it. So yeah, like it gives a sense of some of the key milestones I think we had.
And the people that are right now part of the team, then were they all part of Pipedrive already, or did we also hire new people?
No, so I think the core team is basically all pipe drivers, right? At the beginning, it was only core pipe drivers and ex-Mailigen people, but they're pipe drivers now, right? So the core team consisted of people with the knowledge, with the main knowledge from Mailigen as well as ours. And the team was much, much smaller at the beginning. I think we're talking about like 5 to 7 people. So it has grown exponentially since then.
And just to add that it was really great having that blend, because while with Mailigen, they just had this amazing domain expertise, right? They just, that bought us honestly a year and a half, easily, right? Maybe 2. So they had that domain expertise. So it saves us a ton of ancillary research to really get to know them. So we were able to accelerate that research. And 2 is their knowledge on infra. Actually, the whole infrastructure knowledge is lacking for us, specifically for this domain, right? For a marketing automation tool. So those 2 things, those 2 pieces of knowledge were great. But what these kind of, let's say, long-serving Pipedrive people could do is, great at developing experiences, right? And ensuring that it seamlessly integrates with the core product. So we felt that marrying together was a great blend, and I think that's kind of worked.
And I'm guessing because it's existing pipe drivers, you probably had to take then people away from something existing. I'm particularly interested in your role, Agne. You're the head of research, but you describe your participation in this project like so involved in it. So how can you actually lead a team and get involved in this? And did you have to drop something? Did you bring someone else from your research team into this?
Well, I remind you, like at that time when I started, you were like the head of so basically I started and I was just a researcher. So I had like more time, of course, like even currently, but it was one of my main topics. And I still like, even besides like leading the team, like I think marketing is the main topic I'm involved in. So I try to do my best, and probably as the team grows and will build faster, we'll have more people involved from research also, because we are taking the next steps and more explanation is needed. So, but at that time it was, it was my
quality
main
of
baby.
my memory has been publicly exposed.
And we did say, listen, like if there's one problem we're trying to solve, this is it. If we had to just focus on one, so we need our best people on the job.
But then, you know, I'm not leading the research team anymore. You still start at one point leading the team, and the work continued. So how did that impact the team's dynamics? A whole new area. It's not a project, right? You said it yourself. You said it. This is not a project. This is something we're actually investing on. So how did that impact the dynamics of?
Well, actually, like as I mentioned, like the designers and PMs in Pipedrive, they they all like customer centric, and research is like is basically in our blood. So I'm like we are actually striving towards that. So that's why we are training people in Pipedrive to do research on their own. So like if you have to do a usability test, then you know there are plenty of people who can do it. Also in the campaigns team, basically there are PMs doing research and designers helping out. So and if there's a bigger project, then we collaborate, we do it together. So that's the way we tackle it. So yeah, I think that's actually the way maybe for forward also for the new products. So.
And I want to add that I know there's a real sense of pride. I mean, I've worked at quite a few places, right? And I haven't seen this level of investment in training and getting people up to speed on how to do research, both from a qual and a quant perspective in other places. And there's a real sense of pride. I see, because it's not just product people, even designers can do this training. Anyone can, right? And they'll post it. They'll get a certificate at the end of this, right? So we're really looking to develop to make sure that you know, it's not like research only sits with research. It sits with all of us. And actually this team coaches all of us to be better at it. And so that's been, because I think at the heart of a lot of what we do in product is actually research. You know, at some level it's research. So being very good at that is key to what we do at Pipedrive. And so I feel a real sense of pride with especially the new starters, or when they come in, they receive that certificate, and we have a number of levels there, and they post it on LinkedIn. I was like, wow, this is I did not realize this is going to be something they're going to show off about and post publicly. But it's been, I would say, a very successful training program.
Yeah. And I think that answers to the question of how we manage a particular topic, in this case, research, with a limited number of people, right? So that's how it's scaled. But someone's asking a question here that I think requires a different perspective, and perhaps both of you can contribute to it, is how do you balance research? Oops, somebody added a question and now I lost it. How do we balance research, here it is, with fast decision making, because questions from customers will never stop. Like all the questions that you can answer by talking to customers will not end. So how do we balance that?
Well, I think probably I'll start, but Agne will have more scientific approach to that. But I think as a PM, right, we have to get going. We can get as much research as we can, but at some point we need to say, okay, this is the time to go. And I think, Krish, you brought it up. It's like this 80-20 rule, right? You see certain things repeating, you're like, okay, we got to move. We have to at least try, because the time lost looking for more validation is time lost trying it actually in live. So I would say that, yeah, just as soon as you see some kind of pattern, this is the time to grab and go. Yeah. From my perspective.
Yeah, pattern is the word researchers love. It's like when you start seeing patterns, then you say like the end is somewhere close, so you can finish something already. But answer to that question is like when you have exploratory research, you are thinking about the problem space, the pains, then you have to take time. Like there is no rush. Then you have to do like that you don't miss out any segment, that you do a proper sample, that you cover it. If you do some iterations like design things, you can test it maybe, okay, 5, you see the patterns already, finished, go test it. Like it's depending on like what is the outcome of the research, what are the answers that need to be answered, like should we go to this area at all? Like, you know, I wouldn't do it on 5 interviews, never. it takes time. But with some other aspects, like you can do it much quicker.
Yeah, if we test like a prototype or something, I think
Yeah.
this becomes a really quick thing you can do within a day of talking to like 5 to 7 people and say, okay, click, this is where you all get stuck.
And that's a philosophy we generally have here. It's this idea of confidence, right? How confident are you? And actually, I think there's a sweet spot. I don't want 100% confidence. If we're 100% confident, the whole market knows about this, right? Like we're too late. And if we're 30% confident, that's not enough. For me, the sweet spot, and again, it's like a little bit of this, right? But sweet spot is around 65 to 70% confidence. It's the level of confidence that we know, you know what? We're seeing the patterns, right? We're really seeing strong indicators here. And we're like, let's go. Let's start moving already. We should still keep doing research concurrently, but let's start moving, right? Because if you're telling me you're now 80, 90%, like why have you waited this long? Start moving already, right? So we feel quite strongly about let's get the right sweet spot of confidence and let's take the appropriate action accordingly. Sometimes people use this as an excuse not to move. Like, I'm not 100% confident yet. Well, honestly, if you're going to wait that long, it's too late. You're not adding any value to the market.
Probably fear of failure, right? But we need to move forward and see results to decide whether we continue down that path or whether we change something within it, right? I'd still like to ask a couple more questions about teams. And so I know you mentioned that everyone were pipe drivers and you move them in, but that still requires shifting things. So how are you balancing between making progress with these and hiring people, forming the team?
Well, I guess if I was to speak for the experience of the core team that we had in campaigns, I think if you have your role well defined, like I knew exactly what I was supposed to do, right? There's a bit of delivery, there's a bit of strategy and vision, mainly communication and keeping everyone aligned. And then there's a hiring part. Hiring it goes well if you know exactly what you're looking for, right? What type of person you are after, what kind of skill set, etc. Then hiring is not exactly a problem. Plus the hiring team we have in Pipedrive is, you got to give it to them. It's amazing. We never have a shortage of leads or people to talk to, and it's just a pleasure to basically have that.
Thank you, Olivia. That's to you.
Yeah, they're there. Yeah, raving crowd.
And did we mention we're hiring?
Yeah. And actually, you remember you were
jobs.
asking what was that popular question that I was
Why you work at
moving to
Pipedrive?
later. The question is how to be hired as a product manager in Pipedrive. What are you looking at and what do you expect from candidates? So here is your answer, Dawn. How do you join Pipedrive?
So we have a URL actually. So just in terms of the basics, like we could go to our website.
Your LinkedIn is going to be spammed today.
Yeah, maybe. And actually, by the way, I would encourage, if you're even unsure, is actually reach out to us on LinkedIn. Actually, if you really have some questions, like, yeah, I kind of like what you're talking about, but really, how is it really? Like, there's always warts, right? Let's face it. But actually speak to anyone in your network that may be a second or third degree connection, and just ask them direct. Yeah, half these guys are Estonian. They are incredibly direct and honest, overly so. So just reach out, and we can share. But in terms of what are we looking for? Jana, did you want to start on that one, or?
Right. Okay. So what are we looking for? I think a person who's up for a challenge is definitely someone who's gonna succeed at Pipedrive. If you're willing to try new things, to try different areas, to evolve, to train, to basically be resilient to stuff, then that's the right place to be, and we'll be looking for that when we have a conversation. I think for me, this is like the key element of all pipe drivers, like this willingness to kind of, okay, let's jump, let's try new things. I think the other part would be collaboration, communication. We'll definitely look for people that can talk, that can explain stuff, that are willing to give feedback and receive feedback. So that's something that also will win you points when you have an interview.
And I would say we have a very unique interview process actually, because we don't just give you a piece of homework and then you just go home, create a beautiful report and come back. This collaboration piece that Jana talks about is absolutely key. We see this an incredibly strong attribute to the point where we've actually changed our interview process so that you will be live collaborating with a designer, with another product manager, right? We'll actually have an engineer there as well. So we actually simulate that environment because we see that as a strong success or failure criteria. So the experience alone, you will find fascinating, our interview process. The other, I would just say one other attribute that I look for is this level of empathy. So actually, can you see things from the customer's perspective? Are you able to understand their pains, right? So even if you don't have the domain knowledge, because we don't, honestly, we're not generally, I didn't have the domain knowledge when I came in. You learn that most people are pretty smart. They'll pick it up. It's more like, are you able to really understand the anxiety and the pains that our customers are going through? Because we have confidence. If you understand that, then everything gets better because you have the confidence that you know you're solving the right problems.
Amazing. So yeah, just go to pipedrive.com/jobs to apply, see what are the open positions.
Try your luck.
And yeah, and you'll definitely hear from our recruitment team or from ourselves to hear about the details. But let's continue with what we brought to the market. We've covered so far strategy, execution, tools, techniques, and teams. And the last part I would like us to cover is about launching. I've seen that you've asked some questions. I've intentionally left them out for now because hopefully you'll get answers. We're going to talk about those details, but I'd like to finish with the team topic with a little bit of understanding. We've talked about collaboration. It comes up from the very beginning, right? Product managers and researchers and designers interviewing customers together, people behind boards, whether virtual or physical. But how is this team actually organized? Are you all working in the same room together?
No, this is a very, very unique team in that sense. So we have a designer in Lisbon. We have another couple of designers in Prague. I'm based in Tallinn. We have mostly engineers based in Tartu, etc., etc. There is also a Malaysian team in Riga. So that is very unusual for Pipedrive because we're usually co-located by the problem space, right? And we sit in the same office, preferably. This was very, very different. And actually, I thought that question will come up, and I've actually asked a engineer and a designer that I worked with closely of like, hey guys, because we have such an awesome energy, how did it work for us? And they say, okay, as long as you hire people that know what they're doing and you have a little bit of trust and just the right tools, you're gonna have the magic. So yeah, something we've mentioned, right? Document your stuff. Please do. We are remote, etc. That values everyone's time, and actually writing helps you think as well. Sometimes it's good to write things down before saying those. And trusting in each other's skills. Jumping on a call every time is also not an option. So yeah, I would say a little bit of trust, a little bit of right tools there and then.
And getting those relationships right up front. I know I mentioned it earlier, but actually one key element is once, because Jana was kind of leading this as the group product manager, but once we had her paired up with a great designer, and like I said, it took a couple of iterations to get that match right. It's it's a bit like dating. Got to make sure that relationship works. Once that's there, the rest is so much. A lot of the other problems tend to go away. Because once we understand, like we say, the way we set things up in Pipedrive is we have tribes that own problem spaces. And it's incredibly key that both the product manager and the designer, and of course we have the engineering manager as well, that synergy is there, then we have a lot of confidence that they're able to solve and provide great solutions to that problem space.
I mean, in a way, it's like a startup, right? When you start something new, you usually take the best people with you and it has to click. You don't go and start something with someone you're like not really connecting with, etc. So if you get that right within the big organization like we are, magic. It basically feels like working in a startup completely. So
and from my experience, I actually have worked with all of these people for a long time, and Krish here is someone that I've only seen behind a screen, but I have to tell you that having him right here right next to me, while it is rewarding in different ways, doesn't feel that much different from the relationship we've established. You also have people in different locations, Agne, right? How does that work for you?
Yeah, we have one person working from Lisbon, another one from Prague. So but of course we have met before. It's not like we haven't seen each other. So we once in a while, like before COVID, also met. Actually, we just came from an off-site. First one we had over like more than a year and a half, and it was of course good to see. But you know, there are ways, and exactly, I think if there is trust, you know, basically, and there's only Zoom between you, like Zoom is not a barrier in this sense. So all will work fine. So.
Amazing. So let's take some questions from the audience on these topics of tools, techniques, and teams. I have here one from Denise. Do you use any tool to gather and manage customer insights?
I can
Product board, probably. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. It's basically like currently, like we have tried different ways. It's like grasping and collecting qualitative data is like, I think, pain not solved in the world. So there are different attempts. We are trying to use Airtable. We have tried different things. Like currently we're stick with product board. I think it's working fine. Of course, there are like disadvantages and advantages, but you know, there is no perfect tool. So you just have to make the rules and make people use it in a proper way, then magic happens again. So currently our product board is the tool for insights, plus, you know, the PMs can actually prioritize things there, and, you know, all the data is collected in there.
I have another question here about tools and techniques from Karel, and it's on the topic of design sprint. Have you figured out a way to facilitate a successful remote design sprint? Any sprint tips for COVID era?
Yes, and it's over to you, because actually the design sprint we had, it was a 3-day design sprint facilitated by Maria. And so she certainly figured it out.
One of our best facilitators in the
Exactly.
company.
So
Everyone fights over, I want Maria to facilitate. I want Maria to facilitate.
Maria Facilitator, that's my surname. But yes, so one thing I have to say is that for remote design sprints, the heaviest weight falls on the shoulders of the facilitator. You have to prepare a lot more than you would for a regular sprint, because you will want to avoid people sitting behind their screens for too long. On a physical design sprint, you have the benefit that you have a room, you can move around, you can sit, you can talk to each other, you go for a coffee, maybe you continue with some of the ideas while you're having a coffee, maybe you take a complete break, disconnect and come back, but you kind of have a sense of how's everyone feeling. You feel the room, as they say. You don't have that luxury with a remote design sprint. So the key thing is to understand what are the key activities, questions, sessions we do need to have as a group behind the screen, and what work can people do on their own individually. There's actually homework when you do remote design sprints. There's many tips out there. I mean, typically what we do here at Pipedrive when we want to explore something new is just like when you're learning anything, research a little bit, gather 2, 3, 4 examples from other companies or other people or other teams, mix and match, try one, see what works, iterate on it and do it again. I don't think there's like a recipe. You have to know the team that you're working with. Do they know each other? Do they not? But definitely one thing is nobody wants to be sitting in a screen hours after hours for so many days in a row. So you have to make sure you plan for just the necessary things behind the screen. That's like the one tip I would give you. It's hard to multitask, so now I have to look for a question as I just also spend time answering. But maybe you want to speak from your perspective of participating in a remote design
like
sprint.
I have been participating on remote sprints, I would say 5 times now during the COVID time. And it has been always like fun. And I have never felt this kind of remote thing there actually, because we also use Mira for that. But exactly, if the facilitator has done a proper job, the Mira is prepared, the team is ready to kick it off, then, you know, things happen. And I think it's, I have at least loved all the sprints I have been in. So
actually, it's really strange. I'm a huge I love whiteboards. Like wherever I go, I have to have whiteboards next to me. And when we had the lockdown, I was incredibly anxious because I'm thinking, how are we going to collaborate? Right? How are we going to collaborate? And then once we used Zoom with the what do you call it? You get the breakout rooms, right? And then we use Miro, and then we have like a magician like Maria who sets up this amazing facilitated session where we sprint. It was surprising to I didn't even believe it. I like there's no way it's going to be as good. And I was surprised at how very quickly we're able to condense the process. Because I remember the old days, I would fly over here, you know, and we would spend a day in a workshop. I'm like, wait, in 1 hour in a Miro board, we've got to not 100%, but like 80% of the way there. It blew me away. So I'm not saying it's better, but if it's well facilitated, it is incredible how much you can get done in a relatively short time frame.
Yeah. And one comment maybe here is like when like the first sprint was like remote one, then I know that everybody was like, what is where? And it was a bit clumsy. But then I remember one sprint, like everybody had participated already before in one design sprint. And it was like the Miro opened, the like remote rooms were opened, and it was like basically like non-stop, and then work was done like really quickly. So yeah.
All right. So that is on the topic of techniques, tools, and teams. There's so many questions that I would love for us to answer, but I want to make sure that we cover the whole thing. So let's enter the last group, the last topic, I mean, and we'll have a third round of questions from you at the end. But I know it's a long event and I wouldn't want you guys to drop before we've covered it all. So let's enter into the topic of launching the product, because, hey, we're talking about from zero to launch, we're bringing things to customers, but we really haven't talked about those details. So my first question is, how did you know when was the right time to launch? What's some of the criteria, like date or level of completion? How do you come about defining this?
So I think it goes back to what Agne was saying in terms of, you know, talking to users, iterating. At some point you see, okay, these were the pain points that we've identified. We knew we have to solve for those. Okay, have we? Is it enough? Do we see the pattern in there? And if we did, then okay, fantastic. Let's try to put it out there. Let's actually let it evolve, because when you have one-on-one calls, you get some feedback, right? But when it's out there, you can see the usage, then you see the trends, then you see if they're not using, why are they not using? But for that, we need to put it live, right? So that would be like the point I would say, okay, let's put it out there. Let's start putting it out there, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah. So yeah, basically when it was like I think it is exactly anxiety moment comes again, like also to the researchers, like even if you had tested the prototypes, but then, okay, the first 10 customers got it. Of course, like we had set up a lot of statistics, like basically we had tools ready from research side. We had basically in-app feedback form so that people could join the campaigns app. They could leave feedback or ask question or report the bug. And it was all like basically live, so we could see from day one. Plus, of course, our analysts had done magic and there were like dashboards ready, like basically all were prepared. And basically we're just like waiting for the first customer to walk in the room. And then, of course, from research side, we were ready with our interviews. Of course, we didn't like bother them on day one, but we let them try the product a bit. And then we started scheduling calls with them. Some of them voluntarily said that they want to talk and like leave feedback. And maybe one thing I remember so vividly was like I was in Tartu office in exactly, I think, a couple of weeks after launch, and I had scheduled some calls. It was like late. I was basically on my own on Tartu office, and I had the call at like 6 or 7 o'clock. And I had done 2 interviews already, and they were all like very positive. They were ready to like drop competitors and like move to us. And it was the third. I was like, maybe it's just like a bias in research, you know, like statistical error. And then it was a third call, and it was again like a positive customer. And I remember the Marco, the engineer, was actually next door also doing later for some reason. And I was like so anxious, like, yeah, another successful call and the happy customer. And I shared the feedback. And yeah, that's another amazing moment in research life. So when you see like customers saying like, yes, finally did it. I've always waited for a tool for that. So
and I just want to add one thing. I do that, don't I? Just one more thing. So, I mean, I don't think of it as black and white. Like, when do we launch? Like, what's that day that we launch? I don't think it was black and white. It's almost like 50 Shades of Grey launch. 50 Shades of launch? I don't know. So it's like, actually, let's just get like three. Sorry, I just made that up. But like, you have like, let's just speak to a few customers, right? Let's just start opening that up. Let's actually have an alpha available to 10 people. Let's open this up to here. Let's do this region. It's like, it's evolving over time, right? We don't want it to be this big bang surprise. Like, right, what stage are we at now? It's like I think it's the private. We have an
so
invite only.
It's invite only.
It's
Yeah.
Invite only at
only.
this stage.
Yep.
And I'm glad you mentioned it, because I think a lot of people, when they think of the word launch, they think of SpaceX launching rockets into space, or city majors cutting these and then opening a bottle of champagne, and excitement. So there is a level of excitement, right, in this case, but behind a room, like, someone liked it, someone else liked it, someone else liked it. It seems we got it right, no? So it's a gradual thing then, right?
Yeah, and actually, I would bring it up that we use that gradual rollout also as a tool for us to prioritize things that we were building. So when we got all in the room, we are like, okay, if we were to launch it for 100 people, what is a must-have to have? Okay, let's think we take it to 10,000. What are the things that need to be there for 10,000 people to start enjoying it? All right, we go all in, we open it for everyone. What needs to be there? So that was also this gradual rollout also gives you a perspective. Oh, do you really need it now? Is it really a necessity? Is there a difference between launching for this or for that number of people? So yeah, I would always vote for the gradual rollout in that, even for prioritization.
Which answers to the question of, the MVP, right? It's pretty
Exactly.
much a prioritization system, right? You have to make a call. Is this really necessary?
And it's really interesting because, of course, it's a trade-off question, right? It's time versus scope. And so if you speak to a really early adopter, they're like, give it to me now. I don't care if it's got bugs. Like, give it that to me right now. You speak to someone that's later in the stage, right? Who's maybe more of a let's say the early majority or late majority in the innovation cycle. They're different. They're like, so who else has used it? What have they said? So you're like, you need testimonials from your peers. Interesting. It's not just about the product. You want to hear that this is working. So that's not just product, that's actually product marketing. How do we go to market with this? So it really helps us evolve our thinking and understanding, where does the trade-off lie? Because as you go through that cycle of users, right, in the innovation cycle of the diffusion curve, you'll see that their bar gets higher and higher and higher. And you want to move with that bar in sync. You don't want to get surprised, right? And just go straight to the lay majority and find, we missed that entirely.
And you mentioned a couple of things that got me thinking about another role we haven't talked about, product marketing. When did they get involved?
Well, in ideal world, product marketing should be there from day one, right? But the team was fresh. We were putting it together. We didn't have that person on board yet, but we had the knowledge. We knew that was coming in. So ideally, at the beginning, in our case, it happened a little bit later. And it helped us even with staging, with supporting that, with channels, etc. So yes, this is an absolute person that needs to be involved into scoping, preferably even exploratory part of the project. They are a key player in this sense.
Yeah, and I would say that it's not been our strength historically. That's changing a lot. We have a great kind of head of product marketing at the moment, and we're very clear. When I speak to Artur, he's like, we're going to have a product marketer for every problem space, and of course, campaigns is one of the. We managed to sort that out for campaigns. We're going to do that for others too. So for me, they're kind of really an important part of the tribe when you really want to start thinking about how you go to market. And like I say, go to market doesn't just mean when you go big bang launch, right? It's actually, how do you think about the positioning right from inception? Actually, even before you build a line of code, what would the blog post look like? Actually, what would we write? how do we think about that and work backwards from that? So we're really consistent. The product is consistent with the messaging and the positioning from the get-go. What we don't want to do is slap a message at the end and have it be inconsistent with the product.
Or like,
So-
hey, we've been working on this. You should check it out. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, linking to this, you talked about blog posts or messages, but how do you actually pick the channels? Again, as being an established company, do we go down the same channels we've used with previous product launches, or do we identify something new? How does that happen?
I think maybe something I can bring up is we have Pipedrive community, right? So we needed first people to start using, and you want those who will actually talk to you as well, right? So we tapped into that, for example. This is, let's say, something that probably Pipedrive has as an advantage, our community that I've managed to build. So this is one of the channels we have very strongly used in our project, I would say, before actually reaching out with like, you know, spamming with invites or any like pop-ups in the product, etc. Of course, you can use all of that, but we started from the community.
Just a side note on the community, a bit of a derail, but we started that straight after COVID to solve a completely different problem. Like a lot of people, salespeople were feeling isolated and they want to share their pains. We developed this community. Don't ask me how. It's now become one of the biggest sales and marketing communities on the planet. Like literally, you just Google search, you know, sales community, see where we are in the ranking. It's different region to region, but that has been turned out being this incredible resource, because now we're having these kind of like mini startups, if you like. So, and one of the struggles is just getting early adopters, and it's like you send a message and boom, 10, 20, 30, 50 people like within 24 hours.
Yeah, and you can go to them with a very raw product, right? Answering the question of when do you put it out there? You can put it very early if you consider like, okay, it solves the problem. Let's validate it actually and enable it for them. So for sure.
The research is a good source, like to pick customers and like see what they have said, and then based on that talk to them. So for the campaigns app, all the people who got invites, so basically are added to community also, so they can talk to each other, like share the things, and we can also post stuff to them. So.
But that's a question for you, Agne, then. I mean, when do we say it's too much of reaching out to existing customers? When is the right time to reach out to non-customers? I hear that's one of the biggest challenges. So
Yeah, it's like, I think we have now, like when I compare like maybe a year ago and now, then we have started to talk a lot more to non-customers. Like if you're entering new areas, like, of course, the customers will give you insights and they're easy to reach out. Of course, it's always harder to find the non-customers in a professional way, but you need to talk to this segment. Otherwise, you might look at stuff in isolation, like it's still like our own customers, but there might be areas that they're not aware of, or there might be pains you're not aware of, and you're like not covering them. So non-customers, I think in the persona work, we actually didn't take the respondents only from our own base, but we actually reached out to non-customers quite a lot, and we're doing it now on a regular basis. So like validating some of the things, like, okay, customers are happy, but what about, reaching out to some non-customers? What do they say? Is there potential?
all right. I'd like to start bringing it close to an end so we can also look at the other questions that people are asking in Slido. Krish, would you invest in this team again?
Would I what? Sorry, invest?
Would you invest in this team again? I mean, assuming that making the decision as an exec to put together a team to do this is an investment, right? So.
Yeah, it's funny you asked that, because I kind of indirectly got asked that, because we run these things called concept days where people submit their, like, let's say, ideas or problem spaces that we should solve for, and which has high leverage, high impact. And actually the team submitted something. So I actually had to ask myself something. And I've got to say, the answer was a strong yes, for sure. We're, looking as they're looking ahead at the new problems we want to solve, and what the team has done to date. I would say, yeah, that's. I would bet on that team again.
I saw Jana losing her breath for a second there. Really?
I was looking at you intensely from the side, intensely.
And Jana, would you say yes again to a challenge like this?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. This this is an interesting experience. I'd do it again, like for sure. So if there are more products, once campaigns becomes the number one choice for all salespeople and the marketeers, then I'm available for more
Oh
launches.
yeah, and
if you would
there
like.
are going to be, I mean, I alluded to this in the kind of market map that we've laid out. We're really quite clear on the segments and the problem spaces we're going to jump to, but there are 3 or 4 whole new problem spaces, even more actually, that we're going to tackle. And yeah, we're lucky because we have such a great pool of talent. We're very happy. If someone wants to move, we're like, yes. And I'm happy
Agne,
to do that.
we have 2 yeses here. Now, my question for you is different because from the very beginning, research seemed to play a very important role into this, but you're not implementing this or putting it to the market. So how do you in research get the confidence that the work you've done, the data you've gathered for this team has helped them make the right decisions? How do you know you've contributed to this?
Well, it's not only us, it's basically the data analytics which come to play. Like we are tracking the usage, like more customers are coming, they're happy, they're sending out more campaigns. And we have, as I mentioned, the rating system within the app. So we can see if there are more smiling faces or less smiling faces. So, and of course we will basically measure the temperature every now and then anyway, like are they doing? And because we're going to add new features there. So we need to test it, whether the things we're going to add them, do they make sense? Are they working properly? So the work continues. But it's not only on our shoulders, it's actually the whole team actually will be looking into. So, yeah.
Okay, so one more thing for all of you. If you could do one thing differently, you can take the time to think about this one. What would you do differently?
Start earlier. Yeah, I don't know if Jana and Agne have a want to share your perspective, but so I would say actually, and we did it to a degree, but I think really learned how it was important to have the right relationship from inception, right? So having that there earlier on and understanding the impact of a problem when the relationships are right, because sometimes that energy isn't right, and it sometimes feel like a soft thing. You think, oh, don't quite feel that energy, or actually as a team you might have 2 individuals that are excellent, by the way, individually, but actually as a team does it work? And really looking at that makes such a difference to the impact you can have, because I can screw up and give them even the wrong guidance, right? But if you've got the right team in place, they know how to respond and challenge me even, right? And actually course correct. And so I would say investing in ensuring we have a great team is the most important thing in place, a team that can work and trust each other all the way. Because then I just know these other problems kind of dissipate. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, for sure. I would go with that answer 100%, because just thinking back of the previous, I don't know, 6 months, could we have executed better? There are always ways, right? But is it like significant enough to bring up? Would you do it differently again? I don't think so. Like it's just an iterative process anyway. Could we have done more research? Could we have, I don't know, looked at different angles, etc.? It doesn't come up as something that would be like, this really is in my head as the hot topic that I would want to bring up. But the energy, team energy for something completely new, for something very, very important that has a lot of light on it, from the company, absolutely, the team. And how can we make sure that for next products, we identify that team sooner and we know that it works? Are there any techniques?
And Agne doesn't know this, but on my list of things to do is to speak to her and the team about, hey, how do we gauge a pulse of the team? Because it's not easy to do, right? I can ask you, like, how do you feel? And you might say everything's fine, but actually, how can we measure that? that we've got the right team in place and we've got the right trust. Like, what are the attributes when you say, Agne is already thinking, oh my God, what's Krish asking me to do now? But yeah, I would love to be able to gauge that, because it has such a high impact that actually investing in that, because we've got great PMs, we've got great designers, we've got great researchers, we've got good people, right? But do we have great teams? And that's something we need to really like really great teams that can solve a brand new problem space. Yeah, that's a harder challenge.
Yeah, like would we have done anything differently? Then I would say, like, yeah, we was getting more research, maybe like less research. Maybe we should have decided something early and not like done too much. It's always to find the balance. Maybe something we learned from that is like we basically now have a really pretty good framework of research. If we're going to tackle now the next areas, the next problem spaces, we know exactly what worked, what didn't, in which order we should do it, so that the team is always, that we are a bit ahead and the team can nicely follow like on our steps, and we will guide the way. So that's my like imagination, that we have the nice framework in place and we can be much faster like next time.
Hashtag no regrets. But all right, we are going to cover a few more questions from the audience. And before we do that, I'd like to remind you that if you fill in the survey that you will get to with that link on the screen, pipedrive.live/meetup survey, or scan the QR code. If you fill in that survey, you are first helping us understand what we can improve or keep about this event. And second, you're automatically participating to win some of these prizes, some legendary Pipedrive merchandise, or a 1-hour product consulting session with one of our top product leaders. We're actually giving now 3 1-hour slots. So if you haven't done so, take that link with you, fill it in, and you'll hear from our recruiters next week. If you're
I
among the
heard I
winners.
was one of those slots. So
Yes.
I apologize now to everyone, if you get me.
But let's answer a couple more questions. There's a lot more questions than I thought we would get, and I don't think we're going to be able to cover them all, so apologies already. But let's try and cover some of those.
For the next session.
Yes, we can save them for the next meetup. Let's see. Success. There are several questions about success, so maybe I can round it down into one. So now that we've reached this stage, the product is in the hands of some customers. You know, what's next? How do we know if we've succeeded, and how are we moving forward with this?
There is certain criteria we set, like if we were to have a look completely at the quantitative perspective, as Agne has brought up, you know, there are certain numbers we would like to hit. That is, you know, showing like, okay, are they using the things that we've built? How do they use them? Do they get stuck somewhere, etc.? So there is a part of that we are monitoring, right? That should show us, okay, maybe they get stuck somewhere. Maybe onboarding is not great, right? You know, where do they churn? Why they not finish, etc. So there's that part we need to understand. And of course, talking to users as well, having that approach will also show us, okay, this was our idea of the problems. It's getting solved. Okay, then that's the success. Can we move on to the next stage? Can we actually start putting more meat on the product? So it's not bells and whistles, right? It has to be solid core product that solves the main problems before we move forward with all the fancy stuff.
And I would say that one thing that the team did that was great is actually thinking about success up front. So even before they're like almost building a line of code, it's like, actually, what does success look like? And what's that metric? Because everything we do is going to orient around that definition of success. And so I recall, I don't remember the exact, but it's like if they send X, you know, comms in Y time frame on a regular basis, we know we have a product here that's really hitting their needs, right? So I think that really helped shape not just measurement like afterwards. It's like really shape the actions that you take while building it, because you're really clear about what good looks like.
Yeah, and they have to be realistic as well, right? We took them from understanding the user behavior of, okay, so how many campaigns is the usual to send, right? You know, what is the volume we expect, etc. And that was set in advance because we knew who we're targeting. So now we can see, okay, is there a fit? Are we hitting that? Where are we missing it, right? But that's definitely done in advance based on understanding the user and what's their behavior is like.
Hopefully that answered to several of you asking different questions around measuring success, metrics, and so on. But here's another question that we touched on briefly, but I think we can elaborate a little bit more on it, which is about why user research is the core. How about data and analytics? Is it because of the product category you guys are in? So maybe, Agne, we can speak a little bit about how we work with analysts.
Exactly. So basically, actually, in Pipedrive at the beginning, we were one team with analysts. So basically, but now we are split it, but only because we become too big. There is no other reason, but we still closely work within the tribes. So research and analysts. So we basically collaborate a lot because they get this kind of numbers, and we got this kind of sort of flesh on the bones. And then then the real outcome actually becomes, or insight becomes valuable. So. And with the new app, of course, at the beginning, there was nothing to measure, so to say. Of course, we had some stats from Mailigen. We understood like what might be like where we're actually going, but the real statistics started to come up when we actually gave it out to the first customers. And now we have basically, I could open a dashboard and see all the bells and whistles and see like what the customers did, when, how, were they happy with while doing it. So yeah, now it's basically all tracked.
Yeah, I mean, I really absolutely agree with that. So early in the cycle, this, let's call it in quotes, soft data, right? Like this qual data becomes more important because there isn't that much data, right? And so this pattern matching is key. As we get more and more data coming in, then it becomes more hard and quant data, right? And so actually getting the blend of both is key, but just early in the cycle, there just isn't much of it. And so we really have to lean on a different muscle, which is why from inception, I would say that user and customer research plays a very big role. But actually, as you go further and further right, I would say maybe switches, and that the product analytics that we do becomes more important so that we keep course correcting. So it's a spectrum.
Okay, well, with that, I will consider this event complete. Hopefully, you learned something from these. Maybe you got excited about joining us. So remember to visit pipedrive.com/jobs or reach out to us in LinkedIn, and we'll do our best to answer to your questions and direct you into the process. And stay tuned for a future event. Remember, the recording of these will be shared in our YouTube account and later in our LinkedIn in case you want to watch some of these things or share it with your network. Thank you, Agne, Jana, Krish. It's been a pleasure. Have a good evening, everyone.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.